Hey buddy, I just finished a very intense workout. I've noticed right after a strenuous workout, I just feel good. I'm in this higher vibration, and I want to talk to you about your inner dialogue. This is a topic that keeps coming up in the men's community that came from this channel. It's called the Conscious Men Community. And a theme that everyone seems to talk about is this voice in their head. And I know that voice very well. It is the voice of your ego, and its default is fear. It's always fear. Underneath any resentment, any anger that you feel towards yourself or other people, the root is always fear. And so there's two voices within us. There's that higher voice, and it is real. It is divine. It is the spark of God. And the other voice is the voice of your ego trying to protect itself, trying to preserve its identity. And it took me so long to differentiate between these two voices in my head. I didn't even know I had two voices in my head. I thought every voice that took place was me. I identified strongly with my opinions, with my excuses, with the stance that I took, whether in politics or religion. And when I got to a place where I saw a very distinct line between the voice of my egoic fear and the voice of my higher self, everything started to change for me. The higher voice, the whisper, was telling me for years and years and years to share my story with the world, to speak to you. And every time I choose to do that, man, it's from a place of love. I know that there's a lot of people, probably including you, who's experiencing a lot of pain. You know, unfortunately, the pain is intermittent. It doesn't last all the time, but a lot of us always have this dull sense of discomfort and anxiety and fear, and we don't even notice it anymore. That's our default. And how do we get rid of that voice? Well, you're never going to get rid of it. That's part of the human condition, man. It's always going to be slightly in the background, but it can get smaller. And you don't even have to demonize it. You don't have to make it your enemy. I'm at a point now where when that negative voice pops up and it's causing me to judge myself or other people, or to not take risks, or to not do things in love, and to not make these videos and speak to you, a part of me chuckles a little bit. And it's like this loving chuckle, the way that you would look at a little kid who's just afraid and trying to protect his toy car or whatever is his. I've been hearing my son say the word mine a lot recently. He just discovered that word. I'll buy him a new toy at the store, and immediately he's like, this is mine. I'm like, all right, buddy. Okay, that's yours. And it's okay to have things, you know, but we place so much identity on it. So another way to tame this voice, let me get down to what has helped me, the nitty-gritty. The daily practices, when you're waking up early in the morning and it's uncomfortable, and the sun hasn't come up yet, and you've made a promise to yourself to get up early, whether that's to read or meditate, get a head start on the day. I'm very creative in the mornings. That's when I, script out some of my more fancy videos that are scripted. Unlike this one, where these videos are always a step of faith, man. I never know what I'm going to say to you. Sometimes it's just a feeling that I'm supposed to give and speak directly to you. But whenever you get up early like that, or you're doing difficult things, you're doing a strenuous workout and you don't want to, that gives you the opportunity to really hear the negative inner voice, to really take a step back and observe it. Because it's never louder than when you're doing shit that your ego finds uncomfortable. You take a cold shower, your ego's gonna scream at you. It's gonna be like, bro, what the fuck are you doing? You're a weirdo. Like, why are you doing this? Nobody else does this. You're trying to quit pornography? Bro, this is normal. Everybody looks at pornography. Like, don't make a big deal out of this. Don't be weird about it. You go to the gym, maybe for the first time, or you're new. Inner voice. You don't fit in here. Everyone's judging you. You're never going to be jacked like that guy. What are you doing, man? So putting yourself in those uncomfortable situations will amplify that inner voice. You start cold approaching girls. Inner voice. Oh man, don't do that, man. You're just going to look weird. Like, oh, she's on the phone anyway, man. Don't just leave. Just don't do this. It's weird. The inner voice is always diminishing you. And it means well. It's trying to protect you. It's trying to protect you from humiliation. It's trying to protect you from death, ultimately. Because eventually, that voice needs to die. And then what's left when that voice dies? Just you. Just your higher consciousness. I don't always go too deep with the spiritual stuff, but it's hard for me not to talk about it at this point because I've had objective experiences where I've come face to face with a higher power. And I've heard its voice and I've felt its presence. And every time that happens, it never identifies with a specific religion. It's always just pure love. Pure love. Just, it's vast and it's endless. And when you encounter it, you don't even know what to say. Sometimes you're just like, oh my God. I had a really deep meditation the other day. And let me back up a little bit. I came across a video on social media. I stumbled upon it accidentally. I don't typically watch the news and all the negativity going on in the world. That's not because I'm trying to remain ignorant. It's because I know at this point in my journey that the only way to make an impact on this world is become the best possible version of yourself. Become the man that you admire. Become a man that when you look in the mirror, you respect. Because when you have that energy and that higher elevation, not only do you feel this massive amount of self-love, but you feel that love for others, and other people around you sense it. You become magnetic. And that's how we change the world. By changing ourselves. And you get to this place of peace and realization, and then what can you do? You want to share with other people. You want to love other people. You want to make... however that manifests for you, man. For me, it manifests into these YouTube videos. I'm able just to talk to you. I digress. I came across this video of a young man killing himself on camera. He took his own life. He felt like this was his way of impacting and changing the world. And it was just this very dark energy. And I saw it and I was like, what the fuck? And I, X'd out of the video. And then I thought it was out of my head, but then the next day I was in meditation and I felt this heaviness felt this sick feeling in my stomach. And what did I do? I went deeper into it. I went deeper into that feeling in my meditation. Within a couple minutes, I was literally wailing in my living room. All this emotion came out, dude. I was grieving. I was crying my eyes out. It felt like I was feeling the darkness, the pain, the weight of the world, man. And I had like a mystical experience in that moment. And the only other time I've had mystical experiences like that has been, from taking some kind of plant medicine like psilocybin or cannabis or something like that. But this was one of the realest experiences I ever had. And when I got on the other side of that darkness, I just felt this immense love, and I realized that even that young man taking his own life, there's somehow love even in that. We can't always see it. There's such a massive picture, man. We can zoom out to an extent, but there's an extent that we can't zoom out on all the time. But a lot of times when I have those mystical experiences, and it's just pure love, I realize that everything's okay. And that is the voice that is speaking to you right now. I have to drop a lot of ego to make these videos, because my ego feels very uncomfortable putting myself out there, being vulnerable, sharing all these things. But the more I do it, the more I let that inner love grow, the more comfortable I am doing this. I've had to face that negative voice over and over and over again intentionally for years and years. And if you feel called, man, to elevate, and this goes beyond just self-improvement. Self-improvement is important. It's part of the spiritual journey, if that's something you care about. And it could start just by taking a step of faith, getting in the gym, lifting weights. That's where it started for me. I had some really intense experiences early on during intense workouts when I was experiencing breakups and loss and grief and letting go of certain identities early on, man, like maybe even a decade now. I remember I was doing this intense workout. I was doing these one-arm snatches, which is one of the most intense exercises that you can do. It's basically like an Olympic clean and jerk, but with one hand. And I was just doing rep after rep, heavy weight, drenched in sweat. And I got so in my body and so in the present moment, I just started crying in the gym, and no one around me knew. Nobody could differentiate the difference between being soaked in sweat and tears coming down my face. And I left that gym lighter and a little bit more healed, and I was like, what the fuck was that? And this was before I even started exploring like deeper spiritual ideas and going within and allowing myself to take God out of the box of the religion that I was raised in. Because that takes faith too, man. If you've been raised in a certain religion your whole life, and you start to take steps away and start to allow yourself to see God in other religions and in other theologies and in other things, that's scary, man. That's an ego death. Your ego is going to be like, bro, don't look into that. That's dangerous. You're going to go to hell. That's your ego, brother. That's your spiritual ego. And it's anytime you subscribe to just one specific religion, that ego is going to creep its head up, man, and you're gonna misinterpret it for God. It's not. Your inner voice, self-talk, negative self-talk. I'm going to wrap this up, and I'm just going to say that self-talk is your ego. It's always fear. The opposite of fear is love. I know that can seem like an oversimplification. There's a movie, Donnie Darko, that came out in the 90s. Jake Gyllenhaal plays this character where there's like this motivational speaker or some dude, and he's like, you can break everything down in fear and love. And Jake Gyllenhaal, he's like smug and, kind of this angsty character and he calls him out, and then that character who's talking about these things ends up being like a weird pedophile or something. It's a very intense movie. But my point in that is, just because the truth is coming from a flawed human being who has hidden vices and hasn't faced those vices, and whose inner world and private life is fucked up, they might have bits and pieces of truth. When you get rid of all your vices, when you put them all out in the open and you're seeking this inner truth and you're only running towards that higher voice within you over and over and over again, it's impossible to be depressed. I was this close to taking depression medicine, man. My ex-wife, I remember I was not in a good place, our relationship wasn't good, and I was this close to try to save my marriage. Because I'm like, I'm clinically depressed. What cured my depression was facing that self-talk that was telling me over and over again that I was a piece of shit, that I wasn't worthy. And the only thing that fixed that was taking the step of faith of waking up every day and taking the right actions that I knew deep down were in alignment with my higher calling and my potential. And eventually, my inner voice got smaller and smaller. That negative self-talk, whenever it would whisper bullshit to me, it had no more evidence. It had no more ground to stand on. So after a month of doing this, man, you're going to see a difference. 2 months, 3 months, a year, you won't even recognize the old version of yourself. That's all I got for you. You are loved, you matter, and you've barely scratched the surface of what you're capable of. Side note, check out the Conscious Men community. We talk about this stuff every single week. We do a couple Zoom calls a week. And I'm also launching a fitness course. I'm pretty ripped. And that wasn't an accident. As I started to do this inner work, as my body also started to become congruent with my inner world, that's a big part of it. So check that out. I love you. I really do. I'll talk to you soon.